Hello and welcome to today's episode of Get Into Flow, the mindset shifting podcast. And I like to bring you guests with different perspectives, different life experiences from all over the world. So today we welcome from Singapore, Hani. Hello.
Very excited to see you, and I'm so excited to speak to you, Sabrina.
Me too. Thank you for joining us. So much to unpack with you, but before we get into it, because I know we're gonna chat for a long time, let me just read what you had given me as your specialty. It's so well written. I think it's the best way to introduce you to the listeners, and then I'll ask you to just kind of elaborate on it with your story. So, Hani specializes in helping people redefine success by reconnecting with their authentic sensuality and embracing intimacy as a powerful catalyst for personal growth and freedom. Success isn't just about external achievements, it's about living in alignment with your true self, breaking free from societal norms, and cultivating deeper connections with yourself and others. I am all about this. For those who know me, my followers, my listeners, I'm all about redefining success. I'm all about breaking free of the norms, of the conditioning, and cultivating that deeper connection with self. So, thank you for everything that you do because this is needed in the world. So, tell us, how did you get into it? How would you describe it for yourself, your life experience leading you to this moment, to this journey? We want to hear all about it.
Ooh, every time I tell the story, I want to tell it slightly differently just to entertain myself. But let's see. I love everything that dismantles control systems in my body. Let's just put it that way. Anytime that I'm truly in my flow and truly, totally um, free of judgment, free of limitation, free of fear, that's when the inner goddess or the inner commander or the inner manifester or the inner success, just it feels like the inner flow, like shines through and goes out and does all these things in the world, which then, as a symptom, creates success. And so, whether that is in the freedom of sensuality or the freedom of negative thoughts or the freedom of triggers, right? Every day we have triggers that come through, and healing them, actually going through all the way, creates freedom. So anything that creates liberation allows us to really be ourselves, and that's the what I realized. Because when I didn't have that, let's say in 2015, when I first started this journey, I was following a script of the corporate ladder in marketing. I was following the idea that, okay, I need to graduate, get a job, get a house, or get, and like doing all those things. And those are not freedom. Those are economical and societal constrictions, limitations, or um, just like ladders of success, right? Or as independence. This is independence. You have to go through these steps. And in many ways, yes, it's true. However, like how we flow in those boxes determine how free you feel. And so in that time, I actually had a disease that was similar to bulimia that popped up. My body decided, like, no, like, we're not going to do this, even though you have the paper perfect thing in work and relationship. And I was living in the middle of the city in the apartment that was literally walking distance to all the coolest things and everything, and I was just like, why am I still having this disease? And I also felt extremely uncomfortable sharing it with other people. So then also, why am I ashamed of this? And I didn't even tell my parents. And it was a 15-year thing, and I was throwing up 10 times a day. And it was like extremely weird, right? The inside didn't match the outside. And so, as I would delve into the all possible reasons of why this could be going to work out, I was like, maybe it's a body image thing. Maybe it's an internal disappointment of self-worth kind of thing. Maybe it is just going through all the possibilities and then, okay, now I need to step up and I need to really look at my confidence. Am I really like uncomfortable with my body? Like, is this something sort of like a disguised version of eating disorder? And, and going through that and then going through all the medications or whatever. Eventually, of course, I found a modality that helped me break through that. And that was, and the thing that broke me through that, I self facilitated in that process of 15 years. I got all kinds of modalities. I think over the course of the whole time, it was like more than 33 modalities that certification or practiced, or, inner dance was one of them. Um, I wasn't even in touch with my own sensuality. I was just performing the whole time, right, as a human, and as a dance. And anyway, so then the thing that really helped me was this question in the middle of a plant medicine journey that I self-facilitated because I didn't like to be in a big group. Of when I was doing inner work because I just didn't like that. I needed privacy. And so I asked, am I ready to let this disease go? Before the question could finish, a voice like shuddered through my body and my system and it said yes. Like before, so it was like, can I let this? And I was like, yes. And I was like, oh my God, I see it. And I just saw that, like, I wasn't meant to be selling servers to 7 countries as a life path. And I actually was meant to take everything that I learned in these 15 years of self-healing and because, and breaking through all the paradigms of healing and then be on my path, and which is to be an inspirational figure to support other people in their liberation. And I was supposed to quit cold turkey, this life that I had fought so hard to attain, and then to trust that I can find the skill sets on the way of like getting to the next stage of my life. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'm gonna be doing. But I just knew that that was no other option. It was either my health or that. So I was like, okay, cool. I didn't know where it was going to end up. I just knew it wasn't where I was. And I knew that that fork in the road had to be taken. That Robert Frost poem that, the road less taken. And this was in 2015, 2017, that era where, digital nomadism wasn't like the most popular thing. Work from home didn't really exist that much. Like it was definitely a different paradigm during that age. Now, of course, after COVID, this is all possible. And so then I picked up my stuff. I put everything I learned into 6 modules and started traveling the world, published an Amazon bestseller book, traveled the world, started attending festivals, and started teaching this from a healer's perspective. And then also went in deep learning with multiple energy coaches because I realized that all the triggers actually had energy. And when we dealt with it beyond the cognitive mind in the realm of somatics, it actually, and quantum, I have a quantum machine, that it actually was more effective when you already have dealt with all the stuff on the mental level. And so that's when I was like, oh my gosh, okay, cool. Like there's so many layers that we can do, and let's do this as most effective. So I apply the same level of rigor and ambition and like fascination and just intensity in which I pursued my career to pursue healing. And like that was just like zoom right into that rabbit hole and fully immersed and fully like did like 800 events, shamanic rituals, and like 3 times a week, like with gongs and shamanic drum and full on initiation. People would be spinning like they would tell me like in the middle, like imagine like Times Square, New York, like that was where I was in Hong Kong, and I had like a little studio, and people would just come in during their lunch break, super stressed out, and they would come in, they would sit in a group, and I would like lead them through this journey where they would like let go and shake and do all these things, and they were like, what? This is meditation?" And I was like, "No, this is a combination of all, like of all release processes." And then they would like tell me at the end of the thing, they were like, I honestly, this is my first time ever doing this, and I felt like I was levitating, and I was like, cool, not me and you, is this is all you. And then they would like walk back and stumble back into their days, into their like, trading rooms or offices. And then they would come back week after week or day after day, and that would be our thing during the most high stressful times of the thing. And I was like, okay, cool. And how did I get into sensuality and sexuality? I realized that healing was such a powerful modality that I love transformation and I just love our capacity to heal. And when we are healed, meaning, so the way I define healing is when everything is stripped away and we're back in touch with our natural flow. And I believe in our natural flow and how we will receive everything we want if we can really be humble and to be a not a servant, but a co-creator with like our center. And so I realized that sexuality and sensuality is a shortcut to realize what else we have to let go of to be comfortable with our vulnerabilities. Sex is vulnerable, right? Sexuality and sensuality is authentic expression of our energy inside of us. And so to understand, have body awareness, emotional awareness of such a intimate part of ourselves is who else is going to know that? And so when we're here approving of that, then others have a chance. But if we're not approving of that, there's no chance. So that's sort of the nutshell of sexuality. And then, of course, there's a whole story around how I got initiated in that, how people kept telling me that's my calling. And I was like, no, I'm a business coach. And then I was like, no, I'm an energy coach. And then eventually I was like, fine, I will try it. And then when I tried it, um, the first month that I did it, I had 30 clients. And I was just like, okay, cool. Like there's clearly a flow here. And if I ignore it, then I'm ignoring this, this wave that I could be catching that is so easy because it is my natural way of being.
One thing I'm hearing is something that I know a lot of women can relate to, myself included, which is getting to that crossroads or being at that point in your life where you've checked all the boxes, you've been doing all the right things to climb the corporate ladder, chase success, and you just don't feel it. Something feels off, something doesn't feel right. And with that comes a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of questioning. But like you beautifully depicted, and what often happens is that your body starts to talk to you. Your body lets you know that there's something off, there's something disconnected. And I'm sorry to hear that you had to experience it in such a horrible way and it lasted for so long, but it's sometimes that's what it takes to wake us up, right, to the reality that we need to make a change. And I'm happy that you listen to yourself and that you did leave, because sometimes too, we can't line things up the way we want. We just have to make a clean break and trust. That's another big theme I heard. Trust that you are being led in the right direction, that things will happen and will unfold, and trusting through your process of facilitating these different topics as well. Like you were like, I'm a business coach. And then you're like, no. And then, what came naturally to you and trusting that that's what the people wanted and opening and being open to receive it as well. So, yes, to all these themes, to creating your own life, to taking your control and your power back, to being in a position where you can decide how you want to live. And it sounds like you're a very driven and ambitious person when you're passionate about what you do. Because I can even picture you in your corporate job. Like, I'm sure you were very ambitious and driven, but your body was just like, no, but this isn't for us anymore. This isn't what we want to do. Like, we need to stop this. And then you went all in on healing and you continue to do that. So, definitely relatable. But I'm curious to know for you, like, how was the process of navigating that trust within? Because that's a topic I speak about often. So, for you, how did you start to cultivate that inner trust or just listen to your intuition and just know that you were like, okay, everything's going to be okay?
That's such an interesting question. Thank you for your acknowledgement, by the way. You have such a beautiful, masterful skill of listening. I'm just like so reveling in your clarity and precision and juiciness of like acknowledgments. Um, Trusting yourself. Okay, so I remember my first ever intuitive session in Singapore. This is like in the middle. I think I like this was before I switched. I went from like a mobile application company to a corporate Ogilvy, the advertising company. And so in between that, I had a manager who I actually met at a law of attraction center. And so I really like because I was like really looking into manifestation and I was like manifesting it, this and that. And that was like sort of where my trajectory of like personal growth and spirituality and new age was at 2015. So right now it's kind of like way different than that. Or I see it and I understand it in much more detail. But she said you should see this intuitive. And this intuitive person was this someone on Skype. I think Skype is even like getting shut down now. So this thing's so dated. And anyway, so then she was like telling me, okay, so tune into your inner, like, your center, feel the roots and like, the light stuff that we now take for granted as like, okay, this is just normal like breath work, meditation, visualization. And at that point in time, I couldn't even do that. And she's like, oh, can you hear your, your higher self, get your higher self in you. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this? And now I'm just like, okay, what I need an answer. Okay, I tune in. Okay, got it, And so I feel like my intuition was, the journey of my intuition was first of like apprehension and denial. Like, is this even there? And then second one, are people like kidding me? Like, why are they telling me what my yeses and my nos are when I'm like, consulting like intuitives and psychics. I was just like, why do they know what my yeses and nos are? I don't feel that. And so I was like really really skeptical. I was just like, I don't want to put my trust in another person telling me what I'm saying. And so that was like where it was very, very low trust, low belief, and low sort of um feeling around that. However, when I had my turning point for that yes that came through me, that was the first sign in my whole life that I was like, wow, there's actually an inner voice. And this inner voice actually is able to communicate with me. So then I was like, okay, let me do everything it takes to connect to that inner voice and let's lead from that inner voice because clearly that inner voice is dictating this whole situation here. The power that I felt in this voice was so strong. It felt like it fully embodied, it fully took up space in my whole body. It felt like this voice was so commanding. It felt so strong. It felt so confident. It felt like it was the word I think I would say was like it's not like irresistible, but it's sort of like a word of like, and it's not insatiable, but it's a world like it's like unstoppable. There's this sense of unstoppability. So like, okay, let's try to get closer to this. And so the way to get closer to this took me a long time. I think I went through like many modalities. I went through neurolinguistic programming. I shed my limiting beliefs through coaching, through hypnosis, which are all things I was trained in. And every time I did a modality, one layer of limitations shed, and I got closer to myself. I got closer to facing my truth that I actually had a truth that was not brain, but it was heart. And when the heart was connected to um, a source that was beyond myself and that it was big and that was trustworthy too. So I first had to realize that I have a intuition. And then I had to realize that this intuition is what the voice of this is, right? Because if my connection with that person that's intuitive is so weak, then I have to cultivate that. So then I needed to trust that process. It's not like first day, wham, bam, like, let's get in the bedroom with my intuition. No, it was like literally like every day cultivating that dating process, getting to know her and stuff like that. And then eventually it got to a point when I was really working with her and gaining, like, she was gaining my trust that if she gave me an inkling that I would follow. Because in the past, she was like, oh, you're not supposed to be in this job. I was like, nah, like I was just ignoring it. No, I was like a toddler. No, no. Like that was like my attitude towards my intuition. It was like, no, I want to do what I want, like my ego wants instead of my intuition. And so eventually I had to learn to be like, okay, what I'm triggered. I'm not like my natural state is not a trigger. Okay. Not there's two lines of thought here. One line of thought is sovereignty and natural. Like I had to believe that my sovereignty is a worthy state to be in, that I do not need to feel limited and I do not need to feel inferior to my thoughts don't need to limit me. And so that was the first like big, 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 big shift to realize that, okay, actually I'm a creator of my own life. And I don't need to listen to outside forces. My parents are a big influence in my life. My dad's always been way smarter in terms of my perception of him. Like he's like in sort of a genius zone type person who I look up to and put on a pedestal. So then when I had to like let his advice exist and not just like be a big influence on me was a big turning point. And then also societal approval and acceptance. I had to let that go to be able to get in touch with my intuition because my intuition might not be the same voice as that. And then this third thing is then understanding that even when I did make friends with my intuition, that the voices that she assumed could be disguised. It could be intuitive voice, or it could be a voice that, that these like manipulated, construed thoughts would sneak in there and take on her clothes and be like, this is your intuition. And so then I had to also really be able to distinguish and discern between intuitive voices that are mine versus intuitive voices that are just wolf and sheep skin. And so that is a lot of energy work, a lot of clarity, and a lot of like when I'm collapsing, understanding, especially when you're in fear, you're collapsing, you're in chaos, you're in a desperate position, like everything's being taken away from you, you are like at rock bottom. That's when it's the easiest to not listen to your intuition because you're in fear. Like your intuition is much clearer when you're happy, you're in love, you're like in that higher frequency of the frequency, the map of consciousness. Is much more accessible. So really, it's to bring ourselves up into that frequency and then get in touch. Because when you're in fear, you're making decisions that are like, oh my gosh, I just lost like hundreds of thousands on the crypto market. Like I need to like save myself, and like that's sort of the trajectory of your decision making, which is not exactly clear, right? And coming from a place of strength, it's coming from a place of fear, and so managing the emotions is very important to access intuition. Intuition is the absence of emotional distortion.
Intuition is the absence of emotional distortion. I just had to repeat it because I love that so much. This also illustrates how easy it is to disconnect from that inner voice and that intuition because we are listening to society and we're following the rules outside and we're listening to advice. And that is a big one for me too. And we have to talk more after this because we have a lot in common. I heard advertising, same. I heard, like looking up to the father figure and the advice that, we don't necessarily listen to. They have a different point of view, and we had to let go of that to follow our heart and follow our intuition. Definitely relatable. But I think that's a big one of letting go of what other people think and just being conscious and aware. You mentioned first you need to acknowledge that you have an inner voice, that exists, and then you need to start recognizing what does she sound like or what does she speak like. And then it's the discernment of is she an ego trying to communicate with me through intuition, right? But there's so much to work on, and this inner work is deep, and I think that's why a lot of people are scared to go there because it does take time. It takes time, it takes work, it takes help, right?
And it's so threatening to your system. I have a lot of friends who are just starting their inner journey. I mean, I have a lot of friends who've done inner work for like 40 years, and I also have friends who've done inner work like this starting this year, right? And it's just too overwhelming. It's
Yeah.
too intense to have so much. So for those of you who are starting inner journey now, just know this, there is a clearing at the end of all this overwhelm. There is a spot that is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it is tough um to deal with that much stimulation. It's a very stimulating process, negatively stimulating or positively is emotionally stimulating. But yeah, it
Absolutely.
is. But once you clear it all, then you can hear your intuition. Your intuition is it's like you're hoarding emotions in your body. So if you're hoarding and you open the door and it's just boxes piling out with like moldy food, you are not able to see like what's at the end of the room in the corner of your intuition, which probably lives like super far away from the
Mhm.
front door. And so it really is a lot of work and it is a drag, but you know what? One day you have to do it anyway, or you can just die like that and it's fine too. That's a choice.
It's a choice, exactly. You
Yeah,
always
it's
have a
totally
choice.
freedom. You're
Yeah.
free to choose. Some people don't want to. And I
Yeah.
have met a lot of people in old folks' home who like never decide to do that and they can still live a pretty peaceful life. It's just a choice how much you want to connect with all of yourself in this
Mhm.
life.
Absolutely. Well said. Because I think if you're someone listening who's saying to themselves, I don't feel at peace in my life. I feel like something's off. I feel like something's missing. I feel like I want more. Like if there's anything that you feel is lacking, if you're not totally satisfied and you know you're capable of more and you want more, this is the invitation for you to start doing this work, to reconnect, to then be able to say, I know what my intuition is guiding me towards. Because your intuition is, and your heart, like it's your inner compass, right? It will guide you in the direction that is aligned with your values, your truth, your authenticity. And that's where you get to really live from a place of freedom because you're doing what you love. You're living from your purpose.
It's like imagine the like your own personal chat GPT, right? Like this has your intuition has been listening your entire life since the moment you were born or even before when you were a fetus, when you were cells together. Like it already had like this concept of you and it's taking in information the whole time. You're training this model the whole time. And so when you get an answer from this particular model, you're like, whoa, like, it is so specific for me. It is so exactly what I want. Like, this is more than I could ever experience. And it's because it knows you so well. It is like, a million dads on millions of pedestals, but still it's better than that because it's you. And so when you really get in touch with that, it's a shortcut to understanding your own answer and your own direction. And of course you're gonna have existential crisis because every other construct in your body will have to die in order to make room for that. So, so the fear and the reluctance and the resistance oftentimes is the existential angst of all these other models in your body that have been empowered to make decisions for you, which is what I found, right? The part of me that wanted to like hold on to scarcity, the part of me that wanted to hold on to, but I will never find a thing that is like this. And will I? Like that version. And then I'm just like, okay. I know I will. And so that's when trust comes in, right? The trust that you can co-create with this partnership that is for a lifetime. And the trust that this marriage with my intuition is going to be enough for me, that we are going to get us through financial independence, eventually financial freedom, like romantic independence and eventually romantic freedom, like, like love, health, money, and spirituality, like in all those realms your intuition has the database of which to help you from not only just your past, but of the future as well. If you understand intuition from a standpoint of it's a multidimensional lens, like a big brother, but not really big brother because it's you, like that's looking at every dimension and every realm and every um, frequency of energy and is able to then see things from a super duper big picture and then align things if you were only just to tap into the the like the motherboard of it or like where it connects to, then you're like, okay, cool. Like I can either be controlled by the system when it's from a form of like purposeful manipulation by whatever systems are in this world, or I can just tap in and use it as a way of empowerment because that's as well has access to everything. So that's sort of how I see it. Thank you for
Hmm.
letting me share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And from that place, you make decisions with confidence. You're not worried about what other people are going to say or think. So the people pleaser in you will finally quiet down. For my people pleasers out there, there is perfectionism too, that if you can just trust, that's definitely helpful for those who are stuck in perfectionist tendencies of like having to have it all figured out or do it right or follow a certain path or certain rules. I think when we start to tap in and we start to connect with our intuition, that's where the magic happens, if I could say it that way. The magic
I
of
want
our
to,
life.
yes, I want to say something about people pleaser, if I may.
Please. Yes.
I always thought of people pleaser as this like, okay, I'm either a people pleaser or I'm not a people pleaser, like a binary situation. And and so I'm like, okay, I'm in people pleasing mode. I need to stop. And then I realized actually there's so many nuances in this whole idea of people pleaser. And then I will bring in the concept of intuition in here too. For example, I'll give you an example. Um, the intuition is not just one message, it's like micro messages throughout the whole day. So yesterday morning, I got woken up in the morning. I was sending my nephew to school at 8 a.m. and I got woken up at like 7 because he was crying and my sister was doing yoga in the living room and she wanted me to take him because he was like running around and wanting her to carry him while she was doing a warrior one. And she was like, Jia, like Chinese for sister, can you please come? Or like, please. Or she just like, Jia, come out. That was her instruction. And I was like, and I tuned into myself. And I knew that my people pleaser obligation, support a sister is like, yes, I will come and save you and, and show up for my nephew. And then my second, I heard my intuition be like, no, you need to rest because literally we went to bed late and we have to do this whole day. My last podcast was at 12 a.m. and then we have this today and like all that. And so I was like, no, we need to rest. We need that extra half an hour. And then so I said, so then in the past, I wasn't able to set that boundary and say no. But my intuition was like, I don't feel like getting up right now and I need to say no right now. And so I had to overcome that people pleaser and say no. And so I was like, no. And then and then 2 seconds late, 2 minutes later or whatever, she was like, yeah, come out. And then I was like, and then I was like, okay, now it's challenging my people pleaser again because then now I'm like, okay, my sister really needs me and I really need to show up and I really want to be the good big sister and I really want to put myself second and I really want to help her. And then I had to be like, fuck, okay, I have to like come back to myself, get back to my center. I had to really respect what I needed and I had to be like, no. And then my no was wavering this time. It wasn't like fully strong. And then a third time, she was like, talking to her son and she was like, I don't know why your auntie doesn't want to come play with you. And I was like, oh my God, like why? And so and I really had to really listen to myself, right? Because I knew that if I did that, then I would feel resentful for not honoring my own boundaries and because I allowed myself to get manipulated by somebody else's need and then let her self-care of yoga be superseding mine. And not that that is a bad thing, it's totally fine. However, my body needed that rest and I needed to also be up and like, sending him to school and doing all that stuff, which is totally fine. But there was an element of conflict of interest. My intuition had a conflict of interest with her needs. And so what I realized was that the people pleaser is not just you, okay, I'm not a people pleaser, then I'm fine. It's a constant battle of like, all right, like, what is if I stay in bed, it's not going to, like, the consequence of that is not like, the earth is going to shatter, right? So it's okay to then hold my boundary here and listen to my intuition here. On the other hand, like there are situations where the escalation point and the level of urgency is higher, then maybe I will show up. However, I'm not going to let it be eroded at a level where, I can take my rest and you can do your thing and you're going to be fine. And so why I bring this up is because your intuition is going to get challenged by other people's needs and other people's agenda and other people's things. And and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of self-love and a lot of like honor and self-validation and self-approval to not go into the cultural construct of I need to be a good sister, I need to be a good daughter, I need to be a good human, and I need to help to be when help is needed, right? So that's like my woman sort of like ingrained cultural and sibling contract that I didn't sign. So so that was like running through me. And then there's guilt when I don't help, right? And then it's like, oh my God, I feel so guilty. Like I could have helped her. It wasn't going to cost me that much, but it was going to erode our friendship if I ignored myself in the process. When you're in a relationship and you give too much to your partner, and then eventually there's resentment and then fights happen and there's annoyance. So what I share is that it's very complex. Not being a people pleaser is a very complex process. And at every moment, it's a decision of like checking in. Okay, my intuition says no. Is this a higher no? Is this a situation where this no is like, it's an appropriate no at this moment? Yes, I decide to take the consequences. I decide to stay true to myself because I want to prevent future resentment because this is not such a serious situation. Okay, cool. I'm going to say a no here. I'm not going to do the people pleasing. I'm going to do what's true. Truth versus people pleasing, right? Or I could also be like, I am a hard no on this. You are breaking my boundary, and I'm also going to show up and take my nephew from your arms, which is what happening. I went over and I was just like, okay, and he was like, no, not interested in me taking him away. And I was just like, oh my God, I got up for you. And then you were like this, oh, okay, of course. Of course. I should have just listened to my intuition. This is not going to happen anyway. And so then there's that too. And so it's like, what can I do to show up at full capacity when my capacity needed that extra energy so that I can have extra patience instead of less patience? And so it's looking at like downstream of like management of energy.
Viewing people pleasing in this way is very helpful because then it's not about necessarily disappointing others. It's about honoring yourself and boundaries that make it that much, that strengthen your relationships, essentially, like you described, and using your intuition to check in and say, like, yes, I could just get up and go help him, but like my body is telling me, and you know from experience that your body is speaking to you loudly, like always trying to tell you a message. And I hope everybody listening, you understand that at this point, that your body is always communicating to you. So even if you don't necessarily hear a voice, like Hani mentioned, you don't hear that inner voice, you're going to feel something. So whether it be a feeling, um, you're going to sense it in a way, right? When you're connected to your intuition, there's something there that's being communicated. And I think that's what we want to strengthen so that you're able to then lean into it and tap into it when needed.
And
Yeah.
then I just want to mention, sorry, just one more thing.
Yes. You
I just
mentioned
want to
all the
mention
things.
also that, and it's also not going to the other direction of being obscenely self-centered and ignoring everything around you either. So it's not about being on the other end of the extreme where you don't care about everybody else and you only operate on your intuition and you're not trying to socialize with the world and trying to be isolated in your own decisions because that doesn't work either unless you're not trying to relate to other humans, right? So it's a really fine balance. And it's not like I'd make a decision and then that's it. It's what I really want to emphasize is that intuition is some people find it very tiring because it is a voice or a feeling that you're constantly considering as you're walking through life, and it could be like a minute to minute thing of checking in. It could be like a break, like do I want to do this activity next kind of thing. Am I wanting to turn right, turn left kind of thing, or am I operating in flow? And when you're in your flow, you're in your intuitive flow. That's totally fun. It's like when you're in your creativity, when you're in your joy, when you're in, okay, I'm flowing and everything is somehow like fitting into the schedule and like I'm just flowing. And so so the point here is to recognize how you choose to use your intuition in your life, when you choose to use your intuition in your life, and who you choose to use it with, so that it doesn't tire you out so much because it could be very vocal or not, right? And then also, some people are going to be flowing with you, and some people are going to be having their flow is just not your flow, and you just have to accept that. So this is more about flow now.
Which goes with the title of the podcast. So let's flow with it. Let's flow. So that brings me to inquire. I am fascinated, curious, all the things. When you spoke about using sensuality, sexuality, vulnerability to tap into that intuition, is it connected with the intuition or was it a completely different topic that I'm finding, trying to force into intuition because that's what we've been talking about?
Your erotic flow is an intuitive flow.
Okay, great. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I always thought that eroticism was like, I need to feel sexy and I need to feel, ooh, like so, like, comfortable in my body. I need to feel like a cat, like when I'm like walking towards my lover. Like that's what I felt. And it wasn't really until much later after I've done all the breathwork practices that I teach in my Central Liberation program and like all the thought dismantling programs around my sensuality and all the clearings that I've done that I realized that oh my gosh, like erotic flow is actually just like intuition and even more free. So intuition is like a brain thing. In the past, I thought like, oh, okay, intuition is a brain thing. And then at some point I was like, oh, it's a body thing. And then I realized like, whoa, when I really open up my walls inside and let this, and I feel safe enough and I let this intuition flow through my body, it can actually access my fingertips. This intuition can access my body. And you know, when you're dancing, and I talk about dance because Sabrina and I were connecting on dance earlier on, there's a creative flow that can run through our bodies when we're dancing. And when we're dancing freeform, not in a choreo, or even in a choreo, suddenly like in the choreo, like some like extra little like thing would come, flare would come out, right? And so that's like an intuitive flow. Like that's energy running through your body and it creates like some movement and some shape of your body. And so imagine if you were able to have that during intercourse or have that during your essential, like in your most private space, even as a solo practice. That is your sensual flow. That's your erotic flow. It doesn't have to be involved in intercourse, but it can. And when you are that, then you're just a moving, intuitive embodiment of who you really are. Like, who says that that's not who you are, right? Why does intuition has to be in a box inside of your body or inside your mind or inside your heart? It could inhabit this entire outline of your skin. And so when I'm thinking about sexuality and sensuality and how it relates to us is how we show up and how we embody it. We're not like running beacons of wild sex every single second, you know? And so I have a feeling that there's a misconception that when you are sexually liberated and when you're in eroticism, you're just like walking like hard on, walking around or walking dripping, vagina walking around. That's not true, right? Like I wish that could be true, but no, actually it's aliveness. Eroticism and sexuality is translated as aliveness. And that aliveness sometimes could be dripping wet, and that aliveness sometimes could just be in your giggle. It could be in playfulness. It could be, when you're tickling and you're having fun as a kid, that is full on aliveness. And that is highly sensual. You're feeling all the feelings in your body. So first of all, it's like redefining what sensuality and sexuality is. It's a full embodiment of aliveness. And then second of all, it's then bringing that into your life. You can bring that into your sales conversations without within the appropriate topics that you're speaking about. You can bring that in the way you manage your team with the level of awareness. It gives you, when you're in your aliveness, it gives you broader perspective. It gives you more patience. It gives you more positivity. It gives you more capacity to hold other people's falling apartness so that you can really just like stay calm when you're in your aliveness because you're strong, you're rooted, you are centered. That's aliveness plus centeredness. So there's two concepts there. And so it is highly, highly connected to leadership and highly, highly connected to effectiveness and productivity because there's an element of natural harnessing of energy. Imagine you're just a nuclear powered plant when you're accessing your sensuality and your sexuality and you're like self solar paneling, like sustaining your energy levels because pleasure is something that creates more energy. And then you're directing it in very precise pieces in your life, or maybe five at the same time if you're really a multi-passionate or um, multi-focused is how I describe my neurodivergent way of liking to put many projects running at the same time. Then that's fine too. And people are always like, "How do you have so much energy when you wake up?" And then sometimes people are like, "Why don't you have energy for me when you wake up?" And I'm just like, "Dude, like I'm very like focused on where I put my energy." And if and so even if I wake up and have 100% energy, I'm not going to put it in a place that is like draining. I want it to continue growing. So the main points that I spoke about today in this particular part of the conversation. Sexuality, sensuality equals aliveness, equals your natural power and your natural source of energy. Number two, with breath work and dismantling things that block that energy, you can access the full potential of that energy. It takes a lot of inner work, like we spoke about. It takes that discovery, it takes that patience, takes that compassion to look in through the hoarded door if you haven't dealt with some of these things that have been blocking that energy source. And then the third thing is to then access it with trust and intuition because because it works as an intuitive flow. So you can allow that to either flow through you, or you can have a like a less connected, like a partner dance. You can have a distance relationship with it, or you can have a full-on relationship with your erotic flow and your sensuality. And that is your decision. That is your boundary. That is your decision. She can have full permission and consent to embody you, and she can also be away from you, and you can just observe her. As a guy, then it'll be him, right? And so that is your prerogative. And the key here is not one or the other is the right answer. The right answer is that you have choice. You can do full on or distance whenever you want. That is freedom. And then the last one is you can amplify it. And these are actually all the modules of my program. Last one is like you can amplify it and reach out to your team, or it's called sex magic, which is basically cultivating the energy and the aliveness and then directing it into teamwork, into projects, into money making, into impact creating, into communities or family dynamics and dealing with the family traumas. So into healing, right? Without being attached to the outcome, which is also a whole other topic. But yes, I'll pause here.
That's a whole other podcast episode. Yeah. What I'm hearing is that there's this untapped potential within us. And I'm curious to know from you, from the people who approach you, who want to work with you, people you've coached over the years, or maybe just specifically with this program, what are they looking for? Or more specifically, what are they coming to you feeling like? Because I want us to maybe get clear on the thoughts, the feelings, the perceptions, so that if somebody listening is like, hey, that's me, then they know that this program is for them.
And thank you for asking. Um, From a clear perspective, like what people usually realize something is wrong when they have performance anxiety or they have pain during okay, so people can come into me through sexuality or they can come into me from leadership embodiment. So from the sexuality or healing. So from the sexuality aspect, it's, very specific things like not in touch with their body or in touch with their body, but wanting something more and knowing that there's something more there, not feeling happy um, with the way that they're showing up, feeling that there's something more. There's something more. There's another way of being that they just feel tired to be in the way that they are, and they just feel like there's something more in which they can cultivate in their energy field. Maybe they don't have those vocabulary yet, but it just feels like it's a drag. Right now it's a drag. And they don't want it to be a drag to wake up. Like that's sort of like the energy. Like you wake up and you're like, oh, okay, again. Okay, this is just the way it is. Like that. There's a possibility for it to be like, oh my gosh, okay, cool. Like that's the difference. And then so specifically, it's performance anxiety, premature ejaculation for men, and and erectile dysfunction. Those are the sexual things. And then for women, it's like if you have pain during sex, or you can't open up, or you feel like vulnerability is a huge thing and you don't want to do it, or you have a lot of like closing up. So from the sexuality perspective, that's how they come in, how you can come in. And then from a healing perspective, it's like recurring triggers, like, similar narrative fights, and just like relationship after relationship having the same issues, and not being able to overcome like either jealousy or like self-esteem issues or like self-approval or like needing validation, people pleasing, like that. Those are some of the recurring feelings that people have and thoughts that we need to dismantle at an energetic level. So that's the healing door that reaches, and even physical ailments, and then understanding some people have like night terrors and unrelated but somehow related, because then their sexuality and their leadership grows when we take care of their night terrors. And then And then leadership is about wanting to have a more integrated decision-making process and being interested in not like traditional coaching or like only purely coaching, but also interested in spiritual aspect of their impact. And so women and men leaders come to me because they want to take care of the feeling of self-worth on a higher level, not just a intellect. They know everything. Like sometimes they come to me and they're like spitting out the entire like psychology textbook of like what's going on, attachment theory, like, like all the assertiveness and passive aggression and how they deal with everything. And they know it all, but it's not in your body. So this is embodiment work, making sure that your actions and your body and your behavior actually matches what you know. So that's the way that the leaders come into me because come into my world. And then because it's most fun when your knowledge and your actions align, and it can align so beautifully and weave so beautifully, and we can uncover so many little blockages of how the information in the brain is not translating into your system. And that I use a lot of breath work, a lot of dance technology. When you watch someone dance, you're like, how am I going to get that in my body? So a lot of like that kind of concepts.
Which I can definitely relate to. And even the portion about dancing, you can tell when someone dances and they're in their head, right? Like you can totally tell if they're caught up with thinking of what are you thinking as they're dancing versus just being free and being so connected to their body and to the music that they're just like in it. And I think that's what you describe as well. So I'm happy that you are able to integrate that kind of movement piece when it comes to just like connecting with self and doing that in different ways. And the other thing you mentioned, a lot of people intellectually, logically know a lot of things, like rationally, they understand mindset and they understand, the concepts and everything like that. But to then do the work all alone is very difficult because you need somebody, a coach like Hani or myself, who can be that outside source, the unbiased person who can take you through that advanced experience of either connecting to your body, releasing your emotions, or like seeing what it is that you need to connect the dots within yourself. Because to do this work on your own, Hani, I think you've done it on your own. Like you did a lot of it more or less, but I mean, like you were learning from all the modalities, like you were still, trying out all the things, doing all the things. But the journey, I think it's just important to say that yes, it takes time. Yes, it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it to have somebody keep you accountable and support you and guide you through this process. And you don't have to do it alone. You can get all the self-help books, you can listen to all the podcasts, but I think there's something so valuable in investing in a coach who's going to be able to take you there faster or just get you to where you want to be in a way that could just support you fully, that you don't feel like you're all alone on this journey.
It's like running a corporate business all by yourself, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you can definitely delegate it. You can do all the accounting yourself and your books and every single receipt and put it in. And so, yeah, sure, go for it. But you might get burnt out because it's not your expertise and it's not something that you naturally is your calling, right? And so we have so many humans in this world, so we can support each other, so everyone can have their own strengths and own expertise, and then we support each other through our expertise. So. So there's no shame in enrolling help. And it doesn't mean that you don't know how to do it just because there are people who are supporting you through it. It's just that you start learning your own way much faster. And so you can get to the part where you benefit from the healing as opposed to trying to figure out which pieces fit where. Um, it's like, when you buy clothes from a store, it's not like you're learning how to sew, you're learning the seams work, you're learning how like which buttons there are, like what kind of patchwork there is. Like you're learning like you get these different pieces of clothing from us and you're like, okay, try this on, does this work with your healing? Okay, no, like how about this piece of clothing? Okay, great. So you're not like going back and be like, okay, now I have to sew a new piece of dress or a new like suit. So it just saves you a lot of time and energy where you can be using it for your own intuitive flow where you flow the most. So that's sort of how I see it. In the past, when people are like, "Oh, you don't have to do it alone," I'm like, "Ah, it's just a sales tactic," but it's not. It's a time. I mean, it could be, and it could also be a time, like so much time abundance for you. Then you can really spend your energy on seeing the results of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you look at it from a time and energy perspective, we have a limited source of time and energy. And so where do you want to spend that for yourself, right? And if we talk about zone of genius and whatnot, if you're not in your zone of genius, it's obviously going to take you more time and more energy that then takes away from your zone of genius that you want to actually be focusing on. Yes, that's how that all ties together.
And that's your choice too.
And you always have a choice. We're
Yeah.
here to present you options,
All the
present you with
options
all
and
the
tell you that this is a
information.
really, really, really deep journey. You can go down all the way through the rabbit hole, or you can just go halfway through, or you can go 25%. But having someone to show you where the rabbit hole is and which rabbit hole there are available, and then there are millions of rabbit holes, and then at least you can get some support being like, okay, you want to choose like 848 out of the million. Okay, great. Like, let's go down that rabbit hole. Okay, halfway through it, you're like, actually, I want to be in another rabbit hole. Okay, great. Like, let's get you into the other rabbit hole. And then once you're in it, and once you know the where the lights are, how to make your own flashlight, like, how to go through it, then you can be like, okay, cool. Like, you're gonna chill a couple of years, and then maybe you want to enroll another coach for support to get to the next rabbit hole. So yeah, so it's a long journey, very rewarding, and also super fun when you have co-creators with you.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
many rabbit holes in this world.
So many rabbit holes. I love it. I love it. But it's so true. So many rabbit holes. And let's be honest, people, you all scroll on Instagram and go down all kinds of rabbit holes. So why not go down some rabbit holes for your well-being and your health and your healing journey? At least you will benefit and come out on the other side.
I can't imagine just like having this like community call and being like, okay, like which rabbit hole did we go down? And then really identify all the rabbit holes and like have this gamified. This is just like my creativity being like, I'm not gonna make this, but like I can just visualize and be like, I just went down the trigger rabbit hole, specifically the mother trigger rabbit hole, specifically the mother trigger and daughter rabbit hole, you know? Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah.
And then being like, oh yeah, I just went to level one around that, like, and stuff like that. It can be a really interesting game because what ends up happening is deeper relationships, more vulnerability, more intimacy, more meaning of life, more fulfillment, less time in fear and less time in complaining and more time in connection. And less time in disconnection, more time in connection. So you're connected to yourself, you're connected to your intuition, you're connected to your loved ones, you're connected to your friends, and then more connection with your self-worth, right? And that is sort of the most natural way of being. So that's my wish for you.
And for someone who wants to start this journey and is maybe a little overwhelmed, because we talked about a lot today, but you can definitely go in so many different directions. You can choose whatever works best for you, but maybe leave us with one tool or one word of wisdom, not one word, but you know what I mean. Some words of
One
wisdom,
item of
one item of
yes.
wisdom that someone can take away with and really start putting this into practice.
I would say breath. So I call it the yummy breath. Yummy stands for your unique magnetic momentum. And the yummy breath is a breathwork practice that you can draw up from your perineum, which is the piece of skin between your scrotum on your bum or your vagina and your bum. So there's a piece of skin there. So you want to, when you're inhaling, you want to draw that PC muscle up through your spine. And then as it goes over your head, you want to then exhale it 3 fingers below your belly and then ground that energy down. So this breath work is able to diffuse the overwhelm that you're feeling and is able to ground that energy so you can integrate. So the last part about healing, the last step of healing is integration. Integration is taking all the information that's been like spilling into your world from our podcast and allowing your body to digest and metabolize it any way it wants to. Just like if you ate like junk food and healthy food and Coke and kombucha and everything in your stomach, and somehow it's going to be turned into energy in your body. So that's sort of what you want to be doing with all this information and see how your body processes it. And then you want to do this breath work anytime you can think of. And then if it inspires you to continue on this journey, then take that action. Whether that's working with us, finding one of our things and integrating it into your life. Like just ask yourself, how can I integrate my intuition or my empowerment further, and start connecting with your intuition more if you already are.
Thank you so much for this enlightening, inspiring conversation. Your contact information will be in the show notes, so everyone listening, follow her, reach out to her if you're interested in
Yes.
working with her. You heard how to enter her world.
We're currently launching our Sensual Liberation program, which is a program that takes you through all of the skills that we talked about in pieces of lessons. And so the whole thing is on a membership online site, so you can self-pace it with support. And that is the link that I'm going to give Sabrina so that you get the 4 videos that share with you all about it, and then you get an invitation at the end to join it. Yeah, if you're interested, check that out.
And everyone, please share this episode with someone who you feel can benefit.
Share it with your best friends so you guys can do this together, and share and then see like what they think and what you think. Make this be something that is so fun for you and those who you care about and who want to be doing this with you. It really helps to have like a cool friend like that you do it with.